Thursday, June 24th, 7 PM. Call the meeting to order. Remind everybody to silence their cell phones. First on the agenda is an 81P for 1 and 3 Old Forge Lane in Bourne. Corinne, do your office have any comment?
Yeah, one second, I just want to turn my phone. Is there anybody here for Old Forge Lane? Wanted them to speak on it, and then I can.
Yep.
Well, thank you, and good evening, members of the board. For the record, my name is Patrick Roach from Holmes and McGrath, representing the applicant. The purpose of the plan is to create two parcels, Parcel A and Parcel B. It's a land swap of equal areas. Currently, they're known as lots 2 and 4. Those lots were endorsed created by a plan that was endorsed by the Planning Board back in 1987 on Old Forge Lane. By today's standards, they are undersized lots. At the time of the endorsement, the zoning district was R2, and the requirement was 20,000 square feet, so they exceeded the lot area at that time, but today it's R40, so they're undersized lots, and that's the reason for the equal area in the land swap. So Parcel A will be conveyed or annexed to Lot 2 to create Lot 2A, and Parcel B to Lot 4 to create Lot 4A.
Great.
Yeah, so they meet the minimum requirements. There's no bogs, they didn't put the bog note, they have the frontage, like you said, it's an equal swap. So, it's all the minimum requirements for an A&R.
Okay. Any comment from the board? Question? Sandra?
They're not buildable, is that correct? These new lots are not buildable?
No, they're not buildable. They're just gonna be annexed.
Or you're taking
we
the
just
two undersized?
Yeah, we're just reconfiguring the lot lines. So we have to create parcels in order to do that. But it's only 232 square feet, so no, can't be built on.
What's the purpose of doing it?
The applicant, right now, the lot line comes right to the edge of her driveway, so she wants a little bit more separation from the edge of the driveway and to be able to do some landscaping.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Seeing and hearing none, I'd entertain a motion.
I make a motion that we accept the land swap as proposed.
I have a motion to accept the 81P for 1 and 3 Old Forge Lane as proposed. Do I have a motion made and second? Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing and hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it.
Thank you very much.
Is this your Mylar here?
Yes.
Okay, give us 1 second.
Stamp it right back there.
There you go.
There you go. Just give it a little bit to dry and you're all set.
Thank you, folks.
Mhm.
Have a good night.
You do, thank you.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is an 81P for 5 Grinnell Lane in Pecasset.
Good evening, board members. My name's Chris Sanderson, for the record, with Merrill Engineers and Land Surveyors. And you may recall this property, looking at the plan, we were in front of the planning board for a couple of hearings over the past few months. It's the Grinnell Lane subdivision, which consists of 2 lots, 5 Grinnell Lane and 955 Shore Road. And 5 Grinnell Lane is accessed by the private lane, which is Grinnell Way. So pretty simple what we're trying to do with this A&R plan here. Basically, the 2 lots, 955 Shore Road, which already has a pre-existing home on it, has a common lot line with 5 Grinnell Lane, which is the lot which is currently in the process of being developed. So basically, all we're looking to do is adjust that common lot line to give a little more overall area to 5 Grinnell Lane, just to kind of even out the overall square footages there. And both lots are currently in common ownership by the same 4 people. So they're all in agreement to do that, so we're just adjusting that common lot line that goes down the middle of the 2 lots there.
Corinne, your office?
Yes, I hope everybody got my notes. I know they came out kind of late, but I did, on the back of my notes, I showed the Grinnell Lane, and then I showed the proposal that they're doing. They're actually not swapping, but adding land to, is it lot 2 or lot 1?
It's
Taking
5 Grinnell, I think it was originally, the assessor's lot's like 114
All right, so
now.
5 Grinnell, the one that's the end of the cul-de-sac, they are adding land to, and they're
Correct.
taking it from 955 Shore Road. They both will exceed the zoning area requirements. It's about 12,000 acres, that they're, 12,000 square feet, not acres. That's
a big
a
lot.
big lot, right? No, square feet that they're switching. Basically, like I said, both lots would have the frontage and the area required. They would still be, normally if this came in and they didn't have a modification of the subdivision with conditions how to do the access, we would make them do an access determination, but because that was done previously under the modification, they have to still meet those requirements under the modification to be able to pull a building permit for number 5 Grinnell. So it meets all the minimum requirements for an A&R.
Very good. Any comments, Elmer?
I got a few questions. Corinne, the size of 5 Grinnell Lane was 48,500 square feet before this request, is that correct?
Correct.
And they're adding 12,780, bringing the total to 61,000?
Correct.
Okay. The other thing they're doing, in addition to adding more land to 5 Grinnell Lane, is they're adding more frontage on 5 Grinnell Lane. Does Mr. Sweeney own this additional property right now?
Yeah, so right now, the 2 lots, 955 Shore Road and 5 Grinnell Lane, are in common ownership with 4 people. Mike Sweeney, who's the applicant, his fiance, and then his friend and his friend's wife. So there's 4 parties that,
His friend and his friend's wife are the owners of 955?
all 4 of them own both parcels. As of now, they all bought it commonly together, and then,
Here's my concern. We just approved 5 Grinnell Lane as a driveway instead of a paved
yep,
subdivision lane. We approved it less than 30 days ago.
Yep.
Here you are back here for an expansion of the lot less than 30 days later. So ultimately, Mr. Sweeney is it correct that Mr. Sweeney is going to build one house
yes.
on that lot?
Yeah, he's basically just taking a strip of land that is on his friend's house that's
Well,
also
it
an
sounds
owner.
so simple and so benign, doesn't it? But let me tell you something. You're increasing the frontage. My concern, I couldn't read the numbers on the 8.5 by 11 printouts. But my concern coming in here tonight was that what they were setting us up to do was then come back in with another A&R to subdivide 5 Grinnell Lane. Why
Well,
is
there
this
wouldn't be
being done
enough-
now, and why wasn't it done, why weren't we told about it a month ago?
Because he was unaware that he was going to do that. And now that we're in the development stages, working with the architect, he talked with his friend who owns 955 and said, you know, I'd like a little more yard. We own this together. And
When did Mr. Sweeney close on this property?
October?
October. When did has he closed on purchasing the 12,780 square feet of additional land?
He owns the land that he's taking as well. All 4 people are on both parcels. They own both parcels.
Common ownership.
And 5 Grinnell Lane, it will remain 60,000 square feet, so you can't subdivide that any further.
That's what I was trying to
Yeah,
confirm.
nope,
I thought maybe.
No
we were
fast
taking
ones
it
here,
over
it's-
80.
no,
Yeah.
nope.
You'd have to get over 80.
You know, land decisions just aren't made in 1, 2, 3, 4 week timeframes. Why, I'm really befuddled. Why wasn't this expressed to us a month ago?
Because just in the development stages, when he's working with his architect and laying out his home, he just needed a little additional room that's on his friend's lot. So they're just doing a little bit of a land swap, that all 4 of them own it, so.
Did you do did you do the site plan to show this additional land?
Yeah, I have, well, the A&R plan.
What's your date on it?
This one?
Yeah, I see it's
June
June
21st.
21st, and from what I can read. Is that correct?
Yes.
So you just did it this
I
week?
just did it, yes.
You submitted it on Monday?
I did.
You did it on Monday, you submitted it on Monday.
That was when it was finished and stamped, so that's why it was dated Monday.
So we should go away believing that he made this decision over the weekend, called you and said,
No, well, we made the decision a few weeks ago after we finished the modification. That was his first concern, to get that out of the way. And now he's working in the development stages to build his house, and this is kind of a governing factor.
all right, so my next
Critical path
question
for
is for the town planner. Who owns the .45 acres labeled as road, that what was originally gonna be the cul-de-sac on Grinnell Lane? Who owns it?
Who owns Grinnell Lane, the right-of-way?
Who owns the 19,445 square feet that's on your diagram?
That's owned by the ones that have frontage, the same 4 people that own the 2 lots, the same 4 people own the
It's
right-of-way.
not part of lot 5 Grinnell Lane, is it? Oh, yes,
No,
it is.
it's frontage for that, but the road is owned by the parties that front on the road.
Okay, so the road is gonna be a driveway. Who owns the land in that circle that is not occupied by the driveway?
Both lots. Whoever owns those lots
And
owns the road.
could he come back to us later and claim that 19,445 square feet is actually part of 5 Grinnell Lane?
No, it's part of the right-of-way under the subdivision. It has,
Can't be developed.
no,
It can provide frontage, but it can't be developed.
correct.
Is there any risk in this plan, in this approval of this property being further subdivided?
No, there's not enough land area. I don't believe that there's enough frontage. They would need another 125 feet. They don't have enough land area to do another lot. A lot is 40,000 square feet. They have
But
60 and
if he
60.
found some way to qualify that 19,445 square feet added to the 61,000, that would bring him, well, it would actually bring him a few hundred square feet short of 80,000.
But under the road requirements, because if he didn't get his waivers to do a driveway, he would have had to put that cul-de-sac in.
I know.
So if they came back and found enough land, somehow, somewhere, to do another lot, it would be in the purview of the board to make him put that cul-de-sac in. And if he's gonna use the land for a lot, then he wouldn't be able to put the cul-de-sac in. So
We
it's
don't
kind
have-
of like a, you know,
The driveway was approved on the 27th of May. We don't have the minutes for that meeting yet. Did we, and I don't know, I haven't seen a decision letter. Has a decision letter gone out?
Yep,
Okay.
right, we did,
You don't have a
D1?
copy of it with you
D1,
tonight, do you?
yeah.
D1, yeah.
no, I don't.
What I want to know is, do we have any conditions on that relate to this being a one-house only? That the driveway was granted approval on the basis that it would be one house only? We didn't make that a condition, did we?
I know it was discussed in the minutes, I honestly.
remember
It
don't-
was
hearing it.
discussed,
I
and
couldn't,
that's why
I
I
couldn't
wanted
tell you
to
the decision right off the top of my,
So
don't
we
know.
were led to believe, would the board agree that we were led to believe that this is purely one house plan now and in the future? Not subject to change, not subject to increase?
I will interject that they could do an accessory dwelling.
Of course, they could
Yeah,
do
so
an
that would be
accessory
like a
dwelling.
two-family
Yep.
there, but not a separate buildable lot for another single family. They do not have enough area to be able to do that.
Okay, thank you, you put me at ease about that. We've just been through another
Understandable.
situation involving an A and R.
Yeah, I think I was on the meeting for that one. I think I know the one you're talking
It
about.
really was 21 acres of land
Yeah,
at play.
yep,
And that's all I'm just making sure that,
fully understandable.
and I'm not
Question.
accusing Mr. Sweeney, but just looking at the timeline of the way things have gone.
Hopefully, you'll
it
see a
made me
beautiful
sus-
home up
made
there
me
soon.
suspect.
Sandra?
I have a question. Grinnell Lane is a road,
It's a private lane.
but it's also a driveway at the same time?
So, were you on some of the meetings for the modification?
Yeah, I was.
Because
I listened to it.
originally, it was approved as a paved cul-de-sac, like a full-blown subdivision
Right.
road.
Yeah.
And since he's just building, one residential dwelling in the
Yeah.
back, we thought it was just in everybody's best interest to have more of a residential driveway accessing
So
that.
where is this frontage that people have? How can you have frontage on a driveway?
So the lot lines of that right-of-way are still in that big cul-de-sac shape.
Yeah,
So the lot line there, both 955 Shore Road and 5 Grinnell Lane have the required frontage on that way.
so
basically.
it's a way
That's a
in
lane.
one part, and then it's a driveway also? It has two different designations?
It's a way that has been wavered to allow him, on paper, it's a way.
Yep.
And we gave him a waiver to physically build a driveway instead of the paved.
All right,
paved
so
road.
it's never going, it can't, you can do different things on a way than you can on a driveway. I'm just wondering how you can have two things at the same time. Also, the new driveway that went in, I know that it's very, very close to a house on the house to the left, really, really close.
Yeah.
I mean, like 6 feet,
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately.
less than that, and that
these-
was discussed.
These lots were created 25 years ago. That's how they were cut up. That's the only way he can access his lot, which is in the rear.
Right, well, it seemed like when he wanted to get some extra land to do something else, he was able to do that. I just wondered, I know what was done 25 years ago. We have a lot of things that were done in the past that if we could fix them, we would. You know, it was no way to move that driveway over to the right a little bit as they go into it. I mean, when someone comes in there with their headlights, they're gonna be shining right in their house. It's less than 6 feet away from the porch. And the vegetation between there is just,
Yeah, unfortunately, when you only have, say, a 40-foot right-of-way to build that road and the grading that's required on either side and the utilities, you kind of have to go down the middle of that 40-foot extension there. Or else then he would be grading and
the
utilities.
house was there, next door was there long before this building permit, all this was done. It seems to me that it could have been with consideration to the neighbor. I know when you first come in, that house is right near the entrance to the driveway. Your headlights are going to be on when you come in. And when you leave you have to stop there because you're coming out onto busy Shore Road. So you're going to have to stop and wait till you can pull out safely.
Yep.
So that porch or that neighbor's house is always going to be right on top of a vehicle, vice versa. I just
Are you
thought,
talking about across the street?
no, I'm talking about adjacent to it.
Are you talking about sight line as you're exiting?
Yeah, I could see where the driveway is and the house next door. I'd say it was closer to the Barlow's Landing. That's, what's that, north?
So if you're coming out of the driveway,
It'll be
before
on
you
your
exit
right.
immediately to the right,
Yeah. And as you're coming in, it would be on the left.
that, I do understand your concern there, and it's an unfortunate situation.
The owner was concerned too.
You know, he's likely that close to the driveway, then he's likely in a grandfathered situation as far as his setback to his lot line goes. You know, because if he were to meet the minimum setbacks to the lot lines, then he'd be a little further away.
You don't need a setback for a driveway.
No, but,
You can go right up to the
you know,
lot.
we only had that 40-foot strip of access. That was our access point.
Well, there's plenty of land there, and they all own it, right? The whole group of them own the big lot to the right of
They
it?
do.
They could have moved it over.
Look, here's what I understand to be Sandra's point.
I can make my own point.
You're coming to us tonight to make a change to the subdivision.
Yep.
You could have made a change of the location of the driveway
Yeah, you could.
when you were here last month.
So there was discussion of that. You know, there was some concern between the common owners, you know, because one party of two people lives in the existing house at 955 Shore Road. So, you know, if you were to adjust the lot lines and move the driveway over, then you're kind of cutting through somebody else's front yard.
No, you'd be cutting through the property of the big house next door. Same,
So you'd be moving it further
Slight.
onto 955.
you're right, right. A little bit.
You know, I do understand all these concerns.
I wasn't at the meeting itself, but I watched all of it, and I know I made a comment somewhere, and I think it was Mr. Clegg who said that all that was done a long time ago, when this was all subdivided, and that's where it stands. But I'm not so sure that has to be all the time. We've done a million things a long time ago, that just because they were done a long time ago, to avoid problems in the future, you can fix them. It isn't like, you know, if you care about the people you're dealing with, and you care about what people, their lives and what they're dealing with. You've got a big property here, you got a lot of, the owner has a lot of interest in what he's doing. You know, there seems to be a lot of interest in what people want for themselves, but they have neighbors, and we have a certain kind of consideration that might have been not too difficult to achieve.
Yeah, you know, I understand your concerns completely. With the approved subdivision that was originally created, you know,
Right,
anyone
I
could buy that
know
and go
that.
put the
I get that.
cul-de-sac in right away.
Nobody was thinking of anything like
He
that.
was trying to,
He
you
was
know,
trying
do
to
right
think of
by
what
the
he wanted.
neighborhood, make it more of a residential feel. We did look at
Yeah.
every option under the sun to make all the four common owners all in agreement of,
Right, I understand whose interest was at play.
Um,
The owners of the property and what they wanted to do was at play. But they've got a neighbor right at the entrance to their driveway. It wouldn't have been that big a deal to move it. That's my concern.
you know, and I do think there's some
Self-centered.
plans maybe to put some plantings, kind of a buffer between that neighbor as well.
There's not much, I looked at it,
Yeah.
I eyeballed it, I'm not, okay.
I know,
It's
you know,
hardly-
he's fully willing to work with the neighbors.
I
to
don't think it's bigger than the space between these
address
two
their
desks.
concerns.
But I think what the plan, which we did from Grinnell, the cul-de-sac to the driveway is a lot less impact than putting the bituminous down and building the
Oh,
cul-de-sac
absolutely,
the subdivision standards.
Absolutely.
So there's some consideration there too, so from the board.
It would be nice if they did,
So I do want to just bring up one more point as
Yeah.
it relates to that.
Yeah.
So if we were to move the driveway more into the 955 Shore Road.
Right.
Redo all those lot lines, then we still have to address the fire apparatus turnaround. So then you're looking at that
Yeah, you're right.
structure kind of more in the front yard. Because we honestly did bring that up and, you know, see if we could do something like that.
oh, you did, so you recognized it.
Oh, yeah, no, we've looked at this a lot of different ways. We're just trying to, you know, do the best we can for our client.
Well, I think, I'm just talking about the part of the road that, or the driveway that's at the beginning. That house next door is pretty close to Shore Road.
Yeah, and, you know, unfortunately, that was created
If I
in
lived in it, I'd be
1994
concerned,
or
too.
5, and, you know, we did look at the other options, and just unfortunately.
Sliding it
that-
over a little bit would have involved a lot of turnarounds for
Just
fire
to
trucks?
slide it over a little bit, then we'd have to, readjust all those lot lines. That
Yeah.
would push the turnaround more into 955 Shore Roads property, which that owner who's gonna be living in that house didn't want. He was reluctant to even do what was being done now, but he went along with it.
No,
At the end of the day, what we're here for today is, just asking to adjust that one common lot line. He just wants a little more area to build his home, and it's only gonna be these two lots. And,
right. It's hard to think of everything when you start out, especially when if something you want or I want, that's what we're mostly concerned with.
No, understandable.
Yep.
Any other discussion, questions, comments?
Could we have the record show that the applicant's representative is assuring us that there is no plan to build two houses?
I can give you guys a
Put it
copy of the
put it
site
another
plan
way,
I'm working
You
on.
have the right to build an accessory dwelling on 5 Grinnell Lane, along with the main house, but not two primary residences.
Correct.
Not further subdivide that lot to
Yeah,
provide.
as the land stands right now, and what we're asking for with this A&R plan, it's just not doable. It's not doable with the area, the
I'm not,
frontage.
I understand that.
Right, see,
I'm
this is what
asking for
happens.
your assurance, so that it's on the record, that there is,
I'm not the owner of the property.
well, should we
but as
delay
it-
this until you can bring him in here?
No, and I think, he spoke last time and told everybody exactly what his plans on. Nobody's trying to pull a fast one here whatsoever. I can make an assurance on that. As of right now, with the properties that are owned by the parties we're here for representing tonight, it cannot be done. I can make assurance of that, and I think Corinne would agree with me.
One of the things, if they wanted to build another house, they would have to get a variance, because they don't meet the lot area size. So that means they would have to go to the ZBA, and it would be a public hearing with public input, because they couldn't do it by right. So, if somebody bought this house from them next year and decided, let's try to put two houses, well, they would have to go to the ZBA, there's just no land area, unless they acquired more land in the back, or there's some way to do it. People try a lot of different things, especially on Cape Cod, where land is very scarce now, so people try a lot of things. But as it stands today, under the zoning that is in place, they wouldn't be able to put another house there.
To the north of that property, to the north of 5 Grinnell Lane, who owns that property?
There's 3 single-family houses to the north. I have it on my GIS on my phone.
And
You can
their
see-
frontage is on Wing Road?
Yes. Matter of fact, one of those houses
Can you
is
tell me what the square footage of those lots are? I think it's on here, but I can't read it.
on those lots.
It's on this chart that was in your package. But my printout
I don't
is
have
so
it.
small.
No, they don't give the areas, they just show the 3 lots that are owned by 3 different entities, so. Yeah, those already have houses on it, 3 single-family homes.
Okay, I'm comfortable with that, because I think they all front on like that little
That Wing
cul-de-sac.
Road, yeah, we actually have an affordable house there that we built also, the town,
So, and then he's got railroad tracks behind him.
right.
I'd also be happy to provide you guys with the actual lot development plan, which I'm currently working on, so you can see where the house is situated and septic, and kind of see that it's really
I
gonna be
do
meant
have
for the
one more
one
question, if
house.
I might.
Give me a second.
Okay,
Yep.
I'm all right.
You good? Sandra?
Just a question about the accessory dwelling that could be allowed. Can you explain a little bit about what the extent of that could be?
Accessory dwellings, also known as in-law apartments. They're regulated under, what's that, section 4100?
4120.
4120 in the zoning bylaw. It has certain stipulations. It's a special permit through the zoning board of appeals. They usually name the person that can live in that dwelling, and once that person, moves or is gone from there, they can go back to the ZBA to get another person named there. But it's usually a family member. It can't, unfortunately, it can't be used for income, to rent out just on the open market.
Can it be
I-
freestanding?
No, it has to be within the dwelling or an extension of the dwelling. If they want it freestanding and detached, that would be a variance and not just a special permit.
What size septic are they putting in?
5-bedroom.
How big is the house?
It's a good size house off the top of my head. Just started the plan today.
How many bedrooms?
I believe it's gonna have 4 bedrooms, but he just wants to do a 5-bedroom system just to have a little more capacity there.
Okay,
It's gonna be a beautiful home.
yeah, no doubt.
Anything else, Andy?
No, I'm all set, thanks.
Anybody else got any questions, comments? Anybody got a motion?
Make the motion that we approve the plan as presented.
For 5 Grinnell Lane for the 81P?
Yes.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and second. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing, hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
No?
Abstain.
And 1 abstention? Motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll take the Mylar?
Yep. We're gonna have it signed right now.
Town clerk, though?
Town clerk doesn't have to sign the A&R. Yeah. Because you gotta vote tonight, so. Oh,
That's for
why
the
does it have
clerk.
the clerk on there too?
A lot of towns, they'll get stamped in by the town clerk before we're getting distributed.
We'll sign it here.
He just has to certify that there was no appeal.
So I took the last one.
Wanna still put this?
Is that what it says right there?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll stamp it. Didn't stamp.
I know.
There,
It's okay.
there you go.
Just let that dry.
Very much.
Welcome.
Good evening,
You
everybody.
too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's another copy.
What's that? You can leave those right there.
Okay.
Yeah.
We can remove later.
Okay, next on the agenda is the open meeting law complaint, number 1, presented by John York. Corinne?
Yeah, what I've done is I've broken them into the 2 complaints as submitted to the board and to the clerk. I went to the open meeting law guide. I created a checklist. It's just easier for me to know that we've hit all the points. And what I did put on that checklist is the date that we received the item and how it was received. So you'll see that on that first page there. That's just kind of a guide, what we have to do. The next page begins with my answer, my draft answer to the complaint. That's really the planning board's answer. I just drafted it. It is for you to review, amend, revise, and then we'll take a final vote on that answer. And that answer will be set to the person that complained and to the Attorney General. And the Attorney General will review it and get back to us. Once the answer, you approve the answer, then we have to come up with a remedy. How do we answer this? Do you feel it doesn't need to be answered, that everything was fine, or maybe we should change some policy or procedure so that this, these alleged violations are correct? So we'll first look at the answer, review that, and then we'll look at the remedy to this complaint. So that would be the first few pages, up to page 5 of 23. I did try to number them so we can kind of follow right along. On page 6 of 23 is the actual email that was sent. As you'll see, it says to the town planning board, that was also sent to the town clerk at that same time. Then you'll see starting on page 8 of 23 is the actual open meeting complaint form. That is a requirement that they must use that form, and you will see that there. Then you will see page 11 of 23 is the date of the alleged violation, which was May 27th, which was 55 McGansett Road. The next page, you will see the clerk, as the clerk forward that complaint to the chairman. Then on page 14 of 23, you will see the email where the chairman forward the complaint to the board. Page 15 of 23 is the date of the meeting to review the complaint, which is today. Part of the complaint was the Zoom meeting and how it was conducted and the parameters of it. I talked to the town administrator. He sent me the parameters of the meeting and what version of Zoom they purchased, and that just confirms that. I was told that it was the Pro plan under Zoom, so I went on to Zoom and I copied out what the Pro plan had. It tells you the parameters of that account. And then on page 18 of 23 is an additional email from Mr. York requesting that this email be forwarded to the board, and it reiterates the complaint. I think that, and that's the last document of that. Yeah, so I think what we want to do is go to page 3 of 23, where it begins to answer the complaint. It says, "The planning board's answer to the open meeting law complaint by John York dated June 7th. It was at a planning board meeting, May 27th, 2021, agenda item, Mass General Law, Chapter 41, Section 81P, approval not required, A&R plan for 9 lots at 55 McGansett Road. The applicant was Cape Club Building, Inc., owner was the Animal Rescue League of Boston." Then it says complaint number 1, that was the complaint that was submitted. I actually broke the complaint out to answer each section. So, I don't know if you got a chance to review it. I did send it a couple of days ago. I resent it today. But we can, start there. And I'll give it to the chairman at this point, and we'll review it and revise as necessary. I don't know if you want to read it into the record or how you want to do it, Dan.
Sure. Complaint number 1, it says at least one member of the public was refused access to attend the May 27th planning board meeting because the meeting's Zoom capacity was exceeded. The meeting was hosted on a private Zoom account with a capacity of 100 participants, and the meeting was at capacity throughout most or all of the deliberation on 55 McGansett Avenue. There is no way to know how many were refused access. This Zoom account shows only the number of attendees. It does not give any notice or warning to the host or participants that capacity has been exceeded. And it does not alert the host that it would be an attendee has been denied access. Only the persons turned away are aware that this has happened. Statement from the town administrator.
Just before you go on, what I did, the town administrator, when I emailed him, he sent me back the statement, and I included it. And then I also got a statement from the vice chair, Liz Brown. She was the chair of the meeting that night. So those are 2 statements that were in an email to me.
You want me to go ahead and read those in too?
It's up to
Yeah,
you.
I will. Statement from the town, Bourne Town Administrator. The planning board was granted use of the town of Bourne Zoom license. The town of Bourne purchased a pro version license which has a 100 participant limit. It says see attached B, that's the back of the form that Corinne has handed out. This 100-person limit, as far as I know, is for all licenses on Zoom unless you are likely to get a different account, which I don't think most towns do. In more than a year of hundreds of Zoom public meetings, I am not sure we have ever gotten close. But there is always bound to be one case. Question is that I am sure the planning board acted in good faith and that there's truly no real way to know when you could trip that number or if that was 200 or 500. So how many attendees is enough? Statement from the vice chair, Liz Brown, from the Bourne Planning Board, who was chair that night. The entire supposition that the meeting was hosted on a private account is incorrect. There were specific efforts made to make sure this transitional meeting was hosted by me using the town Zoom account. I set up the meeting using the account info provided. Is there a 100-person default of some kind that I should have changed? There was no conspiracy afoot to exclude anyone, and I feel personally affronted by the baseless accusation. The planning board was not and is not aware that anyone had been denied access. The complainant has alleged an infraction, however, the planning board has not heard from the person or persons that supposedly had been denied access. As stated earlier, the Zoom account was an account purchased by the town, giving permission and/or license for any use with for the planning board. This has been the practice by the town for many boards and committees since the early 2020 during the pandemic crisis. According to the open meeting law, the public is permitted to attend an open meeting. An individual may not address the public body without permission from the chair. Availability to watch or listen was made available through the local cable station and/or conference call through the telephone numbers listed on the agenda.
Can we just stop at that point? So,
Yep.
you know, if you agree to that, those statements, that's what I would like to, like to hear. Or if you suggest some changes, or if some statement is not correct and you know otherwise, let's change it and put that in there. Because this is the copy that will go to the Attorney General. And if there's a question, I want to make sure that the board agrees to what is being sent up there. So up to that point, I personally, as staff to the board, did not know that the Zoom account only had 100 participants. We're given the license, we did not give the parameters of the license or the specifications, or that we could even increase the participants. You'll see further on, there's a statement that the board should have known, or at least the chair should have known, that this was a very controversial project and that there was a petition that was submitted to the town. And by looking at that petition, we could have increased the participants. However, that petition was received by my office the day before the meeting. The meeting had been posted, that had not been, it was circulated later. So even if we had thought about increasing it, the time had passed at that time. So I just want to say that, it was not something that I didn't tell you guys, because I didn't realize that they only had a limit. They do have other licenses and other plans where you can increase it. The town, for whatever reason, did not buy those bigger licenses. They bought, this type of license with that participant. I think they looked back in the years at the different meetings and how many people attended. And I can say, I don't know if I was at a planning board meeting that had 100 participants. I think with the Zoom, it opened up. It made it more available for people to be able to watch the meeting. One of the things I did include in your email packets was the COVID exceptions during the emergency. And if you read in that, it says that if the board could not make it available for that live meeting, they could post the meeting on the website so people could view it later. That can't happen normally under the open meeting law, but under the state of emergency, that could happen. That has happened. It's always posted on the cable TV with a link at the website, so you can go back and watch the meeting. So we did meet that criteria under that. Not like we did it because we knew we overstepped it, is because we just happened to meet that. So there's some things that are given to the town during the pandemic. and they call it because of economic reasons. Now, I don't know why the administrator bought that license, if it was economic. I know that they did get COVID funds from the federal government to purchase certain things to help through the pandemic, and that may be his reason, but that would be for him to defend and not for the board, because we did not purchase, we were just users of the license. So there's only so much that's in your control, to be able to do that, so. Do we want to go further on to the, another portion of the complaint?
Alma.
Before we close out on that, is it suitable for board members to have comments on what we've seen so far?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Is now the time to do it? So, the emergency regulation that we were operating under, I guess the best way that I would summarize it is that it says that the town has to provide reasonable access to the public. And I'd like to point out that reasonable access consists of the Zoom, and we now know that it has its limits of 100. But the people who couldn't get on the Zoom, and I've had this experience trying to get on to Board of Selectmen meetings myself, when you can't get on the Zoom, your default is to watch the live TV. And if you have a question or a comment that you want to make, you call the phone number. And by the way, I've done that with the Board of Selectmen, and when I couldn't get on. So I watched it on TV, I had a comment, I called, made the comment, my call was accepted, I had the opportunity, my comment was discussed by the board, it was part of their deliberation. The same thing applies here. So the people who could not get on Zoom were not denied reasonable access, they were denied Zoom access. And I maintain that reasonable access still existed. Cable
yeah.
TV and use of the telephone.
One of the things also is that we have not been contacted by the person or persons that were denied. The complaint was made by another party and made us aware of that. So it would be interesting to be able to talk to them directly to see what was what happened. Because I know some Zoom accounts, you have to be accepted in, invited in.
Yes.
Ours wasn't open. As long as you were in that 100, you could get on. You did not have to be invited in, but they do have some accounts that you do have to be invited in when they have private. Like if you were in executive session, you could do an executive session, but you could lock out people just signing in on it.
But some
But-
organizations do it that way all the time.
Yeah,
And the reason they do it is to prevent Zoom bombing.
Right, right. But this was an open access as long as you got in the 100. So I don't know if somebody drops out, if you get notified that you can get on. I don't really know how that works, and it'd be interesting to see how that works, because the governor has extended the Zoom ability to have hybrid meetings until like sometime next year. So we may want to look into that to do a hybrid, because I know that Liz would have liked to have been here tonight, and she could have Zoomed in and could have done it. And I know summer's coming and a lot of people are traveling, but we should really know what the parameters are.
Right.
Us,
Right.
so that we can kind of control what we do, but that's just a thought for later on.
And Corinne, the statement about the COVID exemptions for the meetings, about, posting them on the website, shouldn't we include that in here as we're following?
I included the agenda that has the Zoom
Okay.
information on it.
Okay.
So that would be a requirement. You can't have Zoom if you don't tell people how to,
Right.
to dial in or to hit the link.
But I'm just
So,
talking about-
but we can add the language if you
But I'm just
want.
saying, no, I'm just talking about the ability for what we did to also post it, to have reasonable access and to post it on the onto the website would give them the reasonable access as well.
Well, what we,
Post what on the website then?
The meeting that we had.
so we're talking, you're talking about the exemption that's
Yep.
under COVID-19, which is what I sent you.
Yep.
You want to add that in the language?
Yeah, let's read it.
The only it's up to you what you want to do. The only thing, I wouldn't add it because we didn't know to do it. We
Right.
just happened to to meet
Right,
meet
right.
that criteria, so we can purposely say, oh, we knew we were gonna put it on the website, so we weren't worried about it not being live, so I hate to claim fame
Oh,
to
no,
it when
I'm
we
not
didn't
saying,
really
we-
do
but I'm
it.
just showing,
Yeah,
you know, that we were not in violation because of that as well.
oh, yeah, well, we can put that in our answer, in
Okay.
our, justification for
Okay.
remedies,
Okay, thank you.
yeah.
Yeah, as a statement of fact, you know, the basis of the argument, I think it's accurate and appropriate, you know, where it went. And I also think it touches on the reasonableness argument, because the town manager said never before and never after have they exceeded 100 participants.
knowing.
So why, is that fiscally responsible for that, how shall we say, build a parking lot for the day after Thanksgiving? Is that appropriate? It appears to pass that reasonableness test. So as a foundation, this is fine.
Yeah.
Sandra?
In the complaint, the meeting was hosted on a private Zoom account. Is the, can you, our town, well, our town one isn't a private one, right? It's
That's-
not.
That's what we're stating, we're stating it was
But I
not.
want to know where that came from, if I might. Is it appropriate for me to ask that?
I'd like to keep, you can, but I'd like
Okay,
I'd like to keep the discussion
I just wondered
amongst
where,
us.
where that came from.
You know, and if you need an
Okay.
answer, and if Mr. York would like to provide the answer, that's okay.
I'll answer any questions you have.
Yeah, that's what I mean,
Do you want me to answer that now?
Yes, if you would. Just how you arrived at that.
Just trying to not interrupt you guys.
no, I appreciate that.
Okay, John York for the record. So when I went on my device to access the meeting, it said, "This meeting is being hosted on Liz Brown's private account." That's what it said across my
Your
screen.
phone.
And that's not just what, it wasn't my phone, it was a computer.
Her phone.
Right, so that's what other people who attended the meeting saw when if you were attending by Zoom, that's what it said. So I'm not sure, I mean, the town might have that account, but I'm not sure that the meeting was actually hosted on the town's account that Corinne is talking about.
Yeah.
The way Zoom works is the town has multiple licenses, and they gave her a license, so she's using the town's account, but on her computer, like every other board
Okay.
that's doing it. They give out the licenses to usually the chairman of the board, and then the chair has to host it on their computer. They're not given a town computer.
Right, okay, so
Why
that
that's-
was my mistake, but it is what it said on my computer, and it's what other people had asked me about that. They had asked me, why is this being hosted on a private account? I didn't know the answer. So, so for the record, I raised this complaint because it happened. Not because I think anybody willfully did anything wrong, but I think it was important to point out that it happened, so that you could have the discussion you're having now, and the town could have the discussion that it's having, in order to make sure that this doesn't happen again, because even though meetings can be held in person now, for example, the Charter Review Committee is still holding their meetings via Zoom, and it's still, with the governor's latest order, there's still the option of having meetings entirely by Zoom or hybrid or entirely in person. So I think it's something that our town should be on top of. And I did contact other towns. I talked to Falmouth, Mashpee, and Sandwich, being the closest towns. And all of them use accounts that are 400 or 500 capacity for selectmen, planning board, major boards, and then they have a 100 capacity account for some of the smaller meetings.
Again, that capacity limit was not us, that's the town and town administrator and the administration, and then they authorize us to use it. We don't go get that, so I do appreciate your
Right.
input on that, but
No,
it's, and
like
it's
I said,
something, you know, that we're trying to get an answer or put it in the
Lesson
right
for the
office.
future.
I understand. I just wanted it for the record, since the town administrator had said that other towns don't do anything differently. As far as I can tell, the 3 towns I polled do things
Okay,
differently.
very good.
But like I said, I brought this complaint because I thought it should be talked about and sorted out,
Yeah.
so that we don't have this problem again. And I think you're doing exactly what I had hoped you would
And
do.
again, we're answering everything, so
That's what I
we're
wanted.
just gonna keep on track.
Great.
And thank you for your input, Mr. York.
I'm not finished, could I continue? On the, so that straightens out the private, right? And with the fact that Liz said she used her phone, I mean, phones are like computers anyway. Would that make any difference in any way? That somebody might get the idea that it was less than, the usual computers thing? I don't know. My
It's
phone,
interesting that I do that, because every time I've signed on, I've never seen that, so I just wonder, because
How
I'm
you
on
do
a
it?
town computer, maybe
know.
it didn't do it or something?
I did, when I logged on, I didn't see it, but I wasn't looking for it either, you know?
Don't see it either, no.
Yeah, so, I'm not saying it was or wasn't there, my computer didn't show it.
I would just add, in doing my own research about Zoom to find out how this happened, I didn't know a lot about capacities on Zoom before this. Zoom seems like it's the ultimate professional, they've got all the problems fixed, but the fact that it doesn't give you any alert when it's turning people away, there's a lot of things it doesn't do that you might guess it would do, so that might address a little bit the conversation you're having is Zoom isn't perfect,
Oh,
like many other
nothing is.
things, right? Okay, anyway, thank you.
and one last thing,
Sandra?
as far as at least one person was turned away, I remember that I thought I heard Joseph McGurl, who was one of the attendees via Zoom, request to say something, and he started to, but there were other voices going at the same time, and I interrupted, and I said, did you recognize to Ms. Brown, was Joe McGurl recognized to speak? Because I couldn't hear him or understand him, because there were two people going on at the same time talking. And I said, because if he was recognized, I'd like to hear what he had to say. So I did say that, and I recognized the muddling of the voices there, and that may have been something to do with the number of attendees trying to get in. But I did say it, and I did hear it that way.
From what I understand, from my perspective, there were a lot of open mics,
Could be, yeah,
and I think,
TVs were on.
right.
yeah, you know what I mean, there were a lot of
Well,
open mics.
that's what I heard, but I'm
and-
not sure what I heard other people saying, but it wasn't clear that whether I know he asked to be recognized, and I wasn't, how that happened. You know, this stuff happens with a lot of people, and a lot of people aren't familiar with how to do this, and they've got
And-
multiple devices going.
And I've never had to host Zoom, and
No, me either.
so having Liz do that and with the ability to mute people and then open them back up, I don't know how that works. I know it's on there someplace, so,
Yeah,
I know when you sign in as the host, because Tracy in my office was showing to me, which I didn't realize, is there is ability that when you sign on, you automatically are muted.
Right.
And then the host can unmute you. And
Right.
I don't know if we ever use that, we just kind of let people in. And that's why I think a lot of people are unmuting themselves, but the host has the ability to
right.
shut everybody
right,
off.
and
I've
keep
been-
them, keep it quiet.
and I
Yeah.
remember when Steve did the meetings many times, he would say, unmute yourself, or I'm muting you all, whatever,
Right.
so that you'd have the same capacity on a cell phone if you were doing it. I mean, the screen would be, I'd be like
Yeah.
cuckoo trying to read it.
Yeah, I can show you right now, but yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, that would be hard to see and read and keep track of it on a
Yep.
5x7. Why didn't she use her computer?
One thing has come up that really puzzles me. We've all been on a lot of Zoom meetings for planning board and other activities in our lives over the last year and a half. As Corinne said, I have never seen that posting on the entry screen that says this is a private, what are the words
I
again,
think it
John?
did say something about it. It did.
is being posted on Liz Brown's private account.
I have
Right.
never,
I did see that.
I have never seen it. Have you, has anybody
I
here?
did see it.
You have seen it?
Yep. I did see it when I logged on.
That night?
Yes.
Have you ever seen it any other occasion?
Not written that way. No, I think they might have said who's hosting it, but I have never seen that. I thought it was unusual that somebody must have added that.
Yeah, I didn't
They
see
added it for themselves.
Corinne,
So the next portion of the complaint, do you want to read it, Dan, or?
Self-centered.
sure.
Okay.
The complaint. If the Zoom host, Liz Brown, who also chaired the meeting in the absence of the board's chairperson, was aware of the capacity of her Zoom account was 100 attendees. She should not have used it to host the meeting. She certainly was aware of the petition well ahead of the meeting. A body must make reasonable efforts to accommodate unexpectedly large turnouts. In this case, where the planning board received a petition with 669 signatures of persons concerned with that agenda item, even a lesser standard of anticipated crowds would mandate greater than 100 capacity.
As you'll see, my answers, which is your answers, are black underlined.
Yeah.
So the next one would be as if you were answering it.
So that it was not known by the chair or the town planner that the account had a 100 participant limit. As far as the petition, it was submitted to the planning board via email on May 26, 2021 at 11:21 a.m. The planning board meeting for May 27, 2021 had already been posted. As stated earlier, Vice Chair Elizabeth Brown was not aware of the 100 participant capacity limit and did not use a private Zoom account. So, like all of us, nobody knew that there was a 100-person limit on that account. Next complaint? Unless anybody's got a comment. Further, the town and/or the planning board, on deciding to conduct this or any meeting virtually, should have provided a suitable virtual platform and should neither require, suggest, nor allow hosting on a private, non-town or non-board account. And the answer, during the declared a state of emergency, the planning board used the tools made available to them through the town administrator's office to conduct public meetings. The Zoom account was made available to all public boards and committees, including the Board of Selectmen, during this time of crisis. Never did the planning board use a private account for public business. The act extending certain COVID-19 measures. The new open meeting law allowed public bodies to continue providing live, adequate, alternative means of public access to the deliberations of the public body. Instead of holding meetings in a public place that is open and physically accessible to the public, adequate alternative means may include, without limitation, providing public access through telephone, internet, or satellite-enabled audio or video conferencing, or any other technology that enables the public to clearly follow the proceedings of the public body in real time. As stated earlier, this meeting was available via Zoom access or teleconference via telephone numbers provided on the posted agenda.
So that's the end of the answer. The rest are supporting documentation. I thought I included the remedies that that Mr. York is suggesting. Let me see if I can find that.
Before we leave that, can we take a comment on that?
Certainly.
Why is there no mention of public TV? Because I think access is allowed via Zoom, via telephone. Doesn't broadcast on public TV with access by telephone if you want to interact, doesn't that
I
qualify?
wasn't positive that night. I know that, her name McGrail, Jen McGrail was on the Zoom meeting,
Yes.
but I don't know if it was a live broadcast.
It was.
It was a live
I'm
broadcast?
told it was.
Because there was one meeting that there was not a live broadcast, it was a later broadcast, and I wasn't quite sure.
The reason we had all that harmonic feedback is because people were talking while they had the TV on.
It was live, okay, thank you. So I'll add that,
Okay.
I'll add that live
As
broadcast.
stated by
Okay.
Comcast, it
Okay.
was telecast live.
Okay, so I'll add live broadcast, okay.
Thank you.
There were several candidates forums that were Zoomed, but they were not live. They were taped and later
Yeah,
video,
I'll add that.
yeah, shown.
Thank you.
Great. So if we go to page 13 of 23, in the middle of the page, it says the requested action. So we could adopt these, disagree, agree, amend these actions, or we could say there's no action, necessary, so,
And these actions were requested by Mr. York.
yes. So the first one is that the town should investigate how and why the May 2021 Planning Board meeting was hosted on a private Zoom account, including whether it was of common practice for some town bodies to host virtual meetings on private accounts, and whether or not the town suggested, encouraged, or discouraged such use.
Not applicable.
It was, yeah,
It has been determined that it was not a private account, so no remedy would be necessary.
yes, and the
Great.
town neither suggested, encouraged, or discouraged such use.
Right, and one further, may I?
Sandra, of course.
But I do remember seeing that it was hosted on Liz Brown's private account, was on the first, when you first logged in, it was there. So you have to be careful not to say what you think is going on when it's not. So that was misleading.
Sandra?
Yep.
It was not hosted on her private account, it was hosted on the town Zoom account.
I know it, but that's
On
what
her-
she put on there.
on-
That led them to think it was.
It wasn't.
I know it.
I said it was a town account on a private cell phone. That's
Right,
what it really was.
But it wasn't Liz Brown's private account, which she wrote on the screen. I saw it too. So I thought it was unusual.
I think that was generated automatically by something. She probably was unaware that that was on the screen.
Oh, I don't know how it gets there. Like
When
Mr.
I saw it, that's not what I was thinking, but hearing what you're saying and putting it all together, that might,
I couldn't imagine where the word private account came from, other than that.
that part of my complaint and remedy was based on what I saw on the screen.
Yeah, I saw it too.
I
Just out of curiosity.
understand now, there's a lot of things about Zoom that aren't quite right, and that could easily be
Right.
something that just means that she's doing it from her cell phone or whatever.
Yep.
Whatever that.
Right, she may have thought so.
Number two, the town and the planning board should attempt to determine, should we have a motion for each one of these?
Well, I can go back and read what you want to change it to, and then you can vote
Okay.
it all at once if you want. I don't know, we can do it one by one, I don't know.
Not responsible. Before we get too deep, I just. wanna
Yeah,
ask that
so
question.
number one, I would say that it was determined that the Zoom account was a town account conducted on a private cell phone. We determined that it was not private, no remedy is needed.
Correct. Number two, the town and the planning board should attempt to determine how many persons were turned away from the May 27th meeting and ask each of those parties what remedy they desire.
I don't know how that would be done.
They'd have to come forward.
They would have to come forward, yeah.
The practicality.
Yeah.
How is that done?
And,
Sorry.
give me 1 second.
No, fine, go ahead.
Anybody else here? Mr. York, can you come to the mic, just in case? Thank you.
Okay, so I put that requested action in because in general, I think with a public meeting where people were turned away, you would want to know if they desired a remedy or if what problem had been caused by that. I also put it in there to highlight the fact that there is no way to know that answer. So I put it in there to highlight, you can say, oh, those people could have gone on local TV or whatever. You don't know that. Only people in the town of Bourne can actually access our local TV. The case that I know of is someone who lives in Onset, who grew up in this town, spent a lot of time in this town, sent their children to school in this town by school choice, feel like they're part of the town, but they don't have access to Bourne cable. So you can't say to those people, you could have watched it on TV. And the more important thing, which I think goes back to the first requested action as well, our town has an information technology department now, not just a staff person. We have an information technology department. I called the information technology department when I was preparing this complaint. They said they don't know anything about meetings being hosted on Zoom. They've never been asked to contribute anything to that. I think that is gross negligence on the part of our town when we have an information technology department to not use that resource to inform just the kind of discussions we're having now. We shouldn't been having. Our information technology department should have been on the job helping the town adopt virtual meetings, and it wasn't. And I don't understand why. As a resident of the town, I'm very disappointed about that. And I think our town needs to address what is the task of our information technology department, and are we using them the way we're supposed to? And I think that's really important, and that's why I put item number 2 in here. Ask your information technology department person if it's possible. I don't think it is from the research I'm done. I'm not an information technology specialist. We have someone in our town who's paid to do that. I think you should ask them that question, and I'm surprised that in preparing this, nobody did ask him that question, unless you did. Did you, Corinne?
No, it's called department, but it's a person.
It might be a person. I voted at town meeting to create that department. It's a department of our town.
That has one staff person.
It is a department of our town that has a staff person who could have been asked that question. Anyway, I'm sorry for getting a little bit on a high horse here, but the reason I filed this complaint is not that I think anybody in the planning board or anybody else in the town willfully did anything wrong. But I think we got something wrong, and we need to look at it and think about why. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, I will say, as a result of this, the technology department, with one person, has been asked to look at this room to make it better for video, audio, and to add equipment to this so that when we do have those types of meetings, that people will be able to, you know, hear better, see better. So as a result of that, there is gonna be some action. You know, not to make excuse for the town administrator of the town, but it was a pandemic. It was an emergency. Everybody did something that they never did before. And was there missteps? Absolutely. And hopefully those missteps would not happen again. So I understand it's a great discussion. We voted for a department, we have a person, and maybe that needs to be beefed up. I know he's a technology person for the entire town, you know, and so I'm sure he's overloaded, but anyway.
Like most other people in the
Yeah.
town. I'm sorry.
Two things. I mean, maybe the town administrator should be given an opportunity to respond to that item number 2 if he chooses to.
I'll
It's the
ask
IT
him. I
department.
sent him this whole package also, so I will ask him.
Second thing is, I still maintain that the town provided reasonable access for everyone, whether they lived in town or they didn't. Because if you can't get access to Zoom, the next default is to call in on the telephone. And that number is posted on the agenda.
Yes, it is.
So that alternative was there, and the town did what it should have done to make that alternative access means available.
Doc?
Yeah, I think Corinne said the bulk of what I wanted to say, but I'm sort of cursed with a practical mind, and it goes right back to predictive questions for the IT person. It's sort of, we live in a world where we live sort of, we have a fire regulation after we have a fire. We learn stuff from it. Now, it may be reasonable to ask the IT person, can you find out who was denied access to the Zoom? If I get a phone call from someone said, I understand you were denied access to Zoom, I'd have privacy concerns. So I guess and a second point, it goes to standing. We have not heard from anybody who was denied access. What's your standing?
As I understand the open meeting law, that question of standing doesn't apply.
In terms of you seem to be speaking for people who weren't here,
Who were not able to access Zoom.
were not, and did not complain.
In my remedy, I ask that you ask those people what they want. I'm not speaking for people who weren't here.
Right. And again, that goes to practicality. I mean, there
So-
are privacy concerns that I think
So
are
I
at
can make
least as
this, I
important.
can probably make this a lot simpler. I didn't believe when I put that item number 2 in there that it was practical or necessarily possible. I thought it was a reasonable remedy to ask for if in the general case of people having been denied access to a public meeting. And that's why I put it in there. Part of the reason I put it in there is because it's there. It's a requested action. If you determine that it's not practical to do that, that's a reasonable thing for you to determine. And I think that's what you're saying. So I think that's a reasonable thing to determine. I sort of wanted it on the record that it's not practical to do that. So I would agree with you.
Liz?
Liz,
Jeannie? I'm looking at you, sorry. Jeannie?
I also, I don't have cable, but I had reasonable access because you can also you can go to the website and it was live, so you could see it that way as well. And being the geek that I am, I was actually.
Go to the
The web.
CCTV,
Correct.
the Bourne Community TV
Correct.
website.
Right, anybody
That's
can
another
see that.
means of access.
Right, that's how I do it. And being the geek that I am, I was actually looking at the participants because I saw there was a petition and I was curious about how many people would be in it. And I never saw that number bounce over 96, 97. It went up and down, but I never saw it hit 100. And I was curious because there have been some busy meetings and some hot topics with other committees, and no one had broken the record yet, so I was just kind of keeping an eye on it. But I think between, cable and the computer, people could see what was going on.
So I think from what I'm hearing from the board, you felt it was reasonable access was given, and it's really not practical to determine who was not able to get on, because other than putting an ad in the paper or something like that, if you were denied that's not even reasonable or practical to do. So I think we all agree with that. It was a statement, we addressed it. I think that's.
I agree.
One last.
Sandra, of course.
Of course. In what I have been reading over the last year and a half about Zoom accounts and meetings like this where legal matters may be present, for example, when we had the Great Gables Market issue, and there would be lawyers' presentations, a lot of these are stopgap measures, these Zoom meetings, and they don't have the same ambiance, or whatever you want to call it, as a live meeting. You don't get to see how many people would actually try to get into the room. You don't get the feel of the people with each other. So there's a limit to what those meetings can actually accomplish. And a lot of lawyers, for example, don't want to do them because they don't reflect the real climate of what's really going on, and they can be a disadvantage to their side or the other because of their natural limitations. So it's too bad we have to do it this way during this time. Maybe if we didn't have it this way, there'd be a crowd outside, there'd be a reporter outside, there'd be people in here, and you could get the seriousness of how many people were concerned. But with the Zoom, you can't. So it is limited in what it can do, unfortunately. I mean, we were allowed to do it, and the governor has said these proceedings can be recorded as legal proceedings, but they don't capture the flavor of the moment. And that's the drawback of the whole thing. It's better than nothing. But I agree that you do lose the effect of the number of people that were interested.
Oh, the paper. Any other comments? Okay, number 3. The town and its officers, the selectman, town clerk, town administrator, town planner, and others, should engage to set and implement a town policy to provide specific guidance to all town bodies with respect to hosting and providing adequate access to all public meetings, virtual and in person. Anybody have a comment on that?
I'd say that my particular view would be that the administration, town hall, selectman's office, town administrator, to set that policy. It's beyond our purview.
And again, with
Not
hope.
that it's not a bad idea.
Yep.
But going forward, Zoom meetings, I think, will slowly start to dissipate and fade away.
Until the next pandemic.
Well,
Hopefully we'll perfect it by then.
The previous pandemic to the one that we're currently in, only you're probably the only one that really knows.
No Zoom then.
No,
No, but the pandemic threw the entire country into a whirlwind, not just with public meetings, but everything. And everybody had to adapt and come up with different ways to do things.
Right.
We did the best we could.
Right.
The government did the best they could. they said we could do this. Were there gonna be hiccups? Of course there are.
And I think the hosting and providing adequate access, now that we know that we've hit the 100, and in the future, I think the town administrator would be aware of that, and if we had to bump it up, and also with the ability, maybe on the agendas, to put it in, we do post how to access it, but to make sure that people understand there's more than one way to get into the meeting. If we were to host it through Zoom or on cable.
As far as specific, policy, I mean, we go by the open meeting law.
Right.
It tells you where you have to have it, how you have to notify it. The hiccup was the Zoom.
Right.
Which no one really used before for public meetings. They might have done it in companies and different things like that. But we are guided by policy through the Mass General Law on how we have to conduct these public meetings. So, I mean, can we have local meetings? Should we address this in case there is some other kind of emergency? You know, that is, we could send a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen. I think you should adopt a policy for emergencies or whatever. But like, I agree with Chris that I think it's out of your purview.
And the governor did set the guidelines through this,
I'm gonna set the guidelines, it's up to the town, which would be through the administration. Town administrator, board of selectmen to set up a townwide policy, if they chose to do so.
right.
It's not this board's
Yeah.
requirement.
And just, between the governor's, act and your note about adding to the, agenda that there is a 100-person limit, it's also accessible through this, and this means, and that looks like a policy. Because it fits this complaint. That's what we're trying to do. I'm trying to understand how this could be a global policy. I'd rather concentrate on this complaint and see if we can address that specific issue.
Yep. Any other comments from the board? So Corinne, on number 3?
I'm gonna put the remedy, I mean, there's no remedy directly for this board. It's out of their purview and should be taken up by the administrator and Board of Selectmen.
Correct. Number 4.
I don't think it should be left that we don't have a policy. For in-person meetings, which this paragraph addresses, we have a meeting room here. If this meeting room overflows, there's a TV set out here, and we've set up chairs when we knew there was gonna be an overflow crowd. And we've even had sessions, not us, but I know the other boards have, the Board of Selectmen, where this is overflowed, you know, so that's a practical limit, but it's a realistic practical limit, you know?
Yep.
So the town does have a policy that relates to the in-person meetings,
In the open meeting laws, they govern us as well.
yes.
I mean, the planning board does have policies and procedures that they set up. And you could add one in there that if it's expected to have, you know, a large capacity crowd, we'll do this and this. And especially putting it on the agenda, that would make sure that it's a live meeting, people can view it at home, have a telephone call. So those are all things that are available that you could put into your policies and procedures in case there is a, you know, project that would garner a lot of people.
Do you
Mr.
think we
Chairman,
could
again-
get Ann to do that before the 1st of July?
Again, I agree with what you're saying, but I still think that should be something that's a town-wide policy for all boards, not specifically to us. I don't think we should have to doctor our meeting rules. This should be something town-wide, because it comes under the state guidelines of an open meeting law.
Yep.
That's it. So if you start if every board started specifically saying, this is our policy on it, I think it gets too convoluted and it becomes too cumbersome.
And it's tough for the public to follow.
Yeah, exactly, it should be a town-wide policy. I
Makes
mean,
sense.
this could even happen at a town meeting.
Yeah.
overflow crowd.
Yeah,
Yeah.
When we used to have them in the gym at the high school,
Yep.
they flowed into the
Cafeteria,
cafeteria,
yeah.
people still could participate.
Yep.
That has to be a townwide policy.
but,
It's
but the
not
town,
this board.
town has historically accommodated those kind of large crowds.
Always have.
It's, again, we're going back to the Zoom.
But again, Zoom is different. It's
Right.
new. It just happened in
Yep.
the last
In,
20 months.
Remedy.
Mr. York?
So,
Yeah, so I would actually just, I was gonna say what you just said. The reason I put virtual and in-person in there was because it seemed to me like there was such a, our town does a great job of handling unexpected overflows on the spur of the moment when it's a real meeting. So I've been at selectmen's meeting here. The issue was, you'd never guess it would bring 300 people, but the issue was whether or not you can transfer moorings to your brothers and sisters, or just your
remember that.
spouse. And I think it might be the same one Elmer was talking about. It filled the outside room, and they went to the other meeting room.
Right.
But they had the closed-circuit TV in the outside, or they had a microphone in the outside room, and the doors open, so that people could hear and talk, and people on both things spoke.
Yeah, it was a
And
good
at
deal.
town meetings, they're always ready to spill over into other rooms, because you never know what's gonna bring people to town meeting, and usually we get 50 people, but sometimes we get 500.
Right.
And so I think that our town does a remarkably good job of handling in-person meetings. It was just the contrast between the two that really struck me, so I put them both in there
Yep.
to sort of say, well, if we can't handle our virtual meetings as well as our in-person meetings, we're golden, right? That's why I put that.
Thank you. Elmer, you have a comment?
No.
Okay,
Move on.
so,
Okay. So we've looked at the complaint. I think there weren't any major revisions. I'm gonna add, we did talk about what adding, I wrote
I
the
still got
note
number
down.
4 to go.
Oh, I thought we read it. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I didn't want you to get too deep.
Go ahead.
Well, 4, for any town body that desires, chooses, or is directed to host a virtual meeting or virtual meetings, the town should provide a suitable platform for hosting such meetings, and should make town information technology staff available to perform the hosting function, and/or to train the body staff and/or a body member or members to do so.
That's a
Again.
discretionary decision for the town administrator.
Yeah.
Like I said, they've already contacted technology and they're gonna upgrade this room.
Right.
So they are taking some actions to host, these
So
technologies.
actions are already being taken, so,
again, not by our board, but townwide.
right.
Makes sense to do that.
So, Corinne, your action on 4?
Yeah, so I'll say that the town is currently taking actions to upgrade the meeting room, and then I'll talk to the technology department to find exactly what it is.
Okay.
And I would suggest that you, again, contact the Board of Selectmen, Town Administrator's Office, and it should be something townwide policy.
Yeah, we go directly to the town administrator.
Right, and that's how we're gonna do it.
Ellen?
Have we, in our response, said anything about recommending to the town administrator that they bump up to the next level of Zoom license so that it
Add that
can
as
go
an
from
action.
100 to 300?
Or to make it available on a case-by-case basis, because if you look at the.
When do you pay the 190?
It says in that Zoom thing that I copied out, that ability, if you know there's a meeting, you can bump it up for a one-time increase in your license.
Usually do that.
So the whole thing is like, you can't do it the day before.
But that then puts it on the shoulders of the person running the meeting. We should have access for 300 people, not 100.
It can be a recommended, action.
I think it should be.
And for the cost of $50.
Yeah.
It's not like it's in the tens of thousands, it's $50.
So the recommended action is to send, something to the town administrator to increase the Zoom capacity.
Possibly, you never know when an agenda item gets attention.
My issue,
Yeah, gets attention, which is
Really?
fine.
Okay.
I mean, when we did the schools and we did some of the other things, that's when town meeting usually overflowed because it was a hot button issue, everybody wanted to participate.
And whether they want to participate or whether they just want to watch.
Or, but it's also,
Be informed.
we know ahead of time on those button issues.
Yeah. Because again,
And maybe we should have known with McGann.
the other one, the 300, like this one, you can increase it up to 1,000 with large meeting add-ons. So there's the ability to bump it.
Okay, so just to kind of, just do an overview, I'm gonna add the live broadcast into that, what we talked about earlier, on page 5 of 23. I'll do the recommended actions or remedies.
Yep.
I'll put that together. Definitely before I send this up to the Attorney General, I'll send you the final draft, in case I've missed something. Answer to me only, please.
Yeah.
Not to
No,
the
not
wider
reply all.
board, okay? You'll see the final documentation, and if you don't feel comfortable and we want to get an extension, we can get an extension if you want to do it at another meeting, but hopefully I'll get it right, give it to you, and then we can, send that off. We also we'll send you a copy as
That's what I
part of
was gonna
that, so
ask.
we'll make sure that you get.
Can I just close
Sure.
with one? So you mentioned in there that Liz Brown felt personally affronted by my complaint, and I feel very sorry about that.
That's what she said, not what I said.
No, and I understand that's what she said, no.
Yeah.
And I really want to apologize to her for that, because that was not my intention. It was, she probably wasn't even aware that Zoom was telling me that it was being hosted on her personal account. And I actually thought a lot about, when I saw her name in my complaint, I wanted to take it out, but there was no way to convey what I thought I was complaining about without putting her name in there. And I apologize to her. I understand how she might have taken it personally, and it certainly wasn't my intention. I just wanted to air that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I will say, I did get an email from Liz, and she said she thought we should take that out of the complaint. She goes, her personal feelings shouldn't be in there. She goes, but if the board wants it in there, leave it in there, but she said you could take it out.
Oh, well, I would say,
Now, Corinne, to answer complaint 1, we have, before we go on to number 2, we have the answers to the complaint that you're gonna put together. Send them back out to us, all in writing, so we can all view it. Do you think we should have a motion here that would somehow incorporate your draft with our review, and if we have any corrections, we make the corrections, and that if they want to let the chair or any other designee then sign off on those, because they'd be able to review the emails and see what the corrections are, so we can send them out, so we, in a timely manner. I just want to make sure it's a timely manner.
Yeah, because there's definitely a time.
Right.
We can, like I said, we can ask for extension, but I think that we're at a point of agreement. It's just this is a matter if I word it.
Right.
The intent that you
Right,
all
right.
said.
That's what I'm getting at. I just want to make sure that we do everything to satisfy the complaint, that we answer in a timely manner, and that we also don't violate any other open meetings. But I think if you send it out, if we don't hear anything back, or if we have a correction or two, and then that's the feeling of the board,
As long as it doesn't change the intent of what was saying, you know, if
Right.
I spelt a word wrong, or
Right.
I missed a word, but if it's a total new statement or something that the board didn't discuss, you definitely should meet again, but, let me put it together, send it out to you, then we have you can get like I said, extension, but you have 7 or 10 days to send it out. I forget how many it is right now, but to send it out to them, but, Mr. York was here, so he had input, so whatever we write, he gets a copy, and he's already basically, know what the board has said for that, so.
correct.
That should save us some time in that.
Anybody want to draft up a motion to that effect? You don't want to make it? Or
Doesn't want to
draft it?
draft it.
I pass on that one.
I make a motion that, that the town planner incorporate the comments of the boards as she heard them, distribute to the boards for return comments, possibly CC the chair, and then issue to the Attorney General.
With chair's approval?
With
Chair's
with
approval. Chair's approval.
And again,
And a CC to the selectman,
no,
town administrator?
No.
No, this is
We're gonna-
just the answer.
this is
Okay.
just the answer.
This is the answer.
And again, no reply all. We'll keep it, just answer Corinne. And I'll
I mean,
go-
if I see that there's some serious issues that the board need to, I'll make sure, but you'll see the final draft.
And again, if we were to see it, if we needed an extension, we'll file for one. But if everything goes smoothly, like I hoping it will, I think that would do it. That's a motion made.
Yes.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and second. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing and hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? Ayes have it.
Okay.
Now
On
go
to
the-
number 2.
Number 2.
This one's a little bit easier, I think. Again, the memo, then the checklist to show when we received the different documentation. Then on 3 of 13 is the beginning of the draft answer to the complaint. That's on pages 3, 4, and then on page 5 is the actual complaint form from Mr. York. And on page 8 is the description of the violation, alleged violation. Page 9 is the requested action, and then supporting documentation, emails. And the page 12 is the chair email that he sent it to all board members, and then the agenda for tonight to review this, so. That's what you have in your hand. Do we want to go to page 3?
Sure.
Dan, you want to read it?
Sure. Planning Board's answer to open meeting law complaint by John York dated June 7th, 2021. The Planning Board meeting, May 27th, 2021, agenda item number 5, election of officers. See the attachment number 6 on the agenda. Complaint number 2. Members of the Town of Bourne Planning Board deliberated in private relative to the election of officers of that board prior to the May 27th, 2021 Planning Board meeting, for which elections of officers was on the agenda and at which a vote was taken to elect officers. The extent of that deliberation was such that everyone involved knew what was going to happen. At the May 27th meeting, action on the election of officers agenda item consisted of a nomination of a single individual for each office, followed by a motion and a quick vote. There was little or no deliberation, and no deliberation of any consequence relative to that agenda item. The answer to the complaint. The planning board conducts its election of officers according to the following planning board procedural rules in the Town of Bourne general bylaw as shown below. Planning board procedural rules. 1, general provisions, reference Article 1.4 of the town bylaws. 1.1, officers. 1.1.1, selection. The planning board shall elect a chairman, a vice chairman, and clerk annually at the first board meeting following the annual town meeting. The board shall at the same organizational meeting select representatives to such committees or organizations as may call for planning board representation. The planning board may designate a member as secretary to be paid only for time spent outside of meetings. Town of Bourne General Bylaw. Section 1.4.2, organization. The planning board shall annually organize by election from its own members a chairman, vice chairman, and a clerk, and may fix their compensation, if any, and may employ and fix compensation of such experts, clerical, or other assistants as may be approved in each case by the Board of Selectmen. The alleged violation is that the planning board members deliberated in private relative to the election of the officers of that board prior to the May 27, 2021 planning board meeting. The definition of deliberation is an oral or written communication through any medium, including electronic mail, between or among a quorum of a public body on any public business within its jurisdiction, provided, however, that deliberations shall not include the distribution of meeting agenda, scheduling information, or distribution of other procedural meeting or other distribution of reports or documents that may be discussed at a meeting, provided that no opinion of a member is expressed. There is no evidence that the planning board engaged in deliberation before the meeting. As in the past, election of officers is an item on the agenda. It is stated in the general bylaws and the planning board procedural rules, the planning board shall elect a chairman, vice chairman, and clerk annually at the first board meeting following the annual town meeting. This is done by a vote of the membership of the following positions: chair, vice chair, and clerk. Nominations for those positions are done from the floor. The current chair calls a meeting to order and opens a floor for nominations. The chair recognizes the member making the nomination. The chair asks the nominee if they agree to the nomination. If the nominee gives their consent, the chair will ask if there are any other nominations for the position and will continue until there are no other nominations. If there is only one nomination, the chair declares the nominations closed, asks for a motion and second to the motion to accept the nominee, and then calls for a discussion and then a vote. At the planning board meeting of May 27, 2021, there was only one nomination for each position. All nominees accepted the nomination and subsequently were voted into their respective positions. As stated earlier, a deliberation is considered a communication through any medium, including electronic mail, between or among a quorum of a public body. There was no deliberation between a quorum of the board, which would have been at least 5 members, outside the public meeting. It is reasonable to believe, as with any other potential nomination, the nominee may have been contacted by the nominator prior to ensure he was in agreement with the nomination. The accusation that everyone involved knew what was going to happen is just an allegation with no proof. It was the complaint's own observation and conclusion with no evidence to support the allegation.
That's the end.
Anybody have a comment?
Well stated.
True statement.
True statement.
I'm curious about the quote.
Hmm?
I'm curious about the quote. I mean, quotes have specific meaning, so is there an unattributed witness?
So the quote came from John Carroll. I called him when I was considering the Zoom meeting complaint, and I forget what the specific item about that Zoom meeting complaint was, but during the conversation, I asked him how what if there was anything that led up to the nominations that were presented at the meeting. And what he said is that, this is what he said, so I'm just relaying it. He said that one person on the committee was designated to contact people who might be potentially, well, some of these details I will have wrong, but one person was designated to contact other people on the committee and find out on the planning board and find out who might be interested.
Excuse me.
Yes,
With an open meeting complaint,
yes.
and you say you might have some things incorrect, we're asking you to give us correct
Okay.
information. That's what I'm asking for. How you say it, I'm asking for correct information, is all, that's all.
Thank you for the clarification. So the correct information is that I had a phone call with John Carroll, at which he told me that one person on the committee was designated to be a sort of information hub, but I don't think he used that word. One person was designated to make contact with other members of the board to find out who might be nominated and to make sure that those people would be willing to accept the nomination. And I was a little bit surprised, but not entirely surprised by that. So I asked him for some more details, and we discussed that a little bit. And his summary, I asked him something I'm not sure, even sure the question I asked him, but his summary statement of the whole process was what I put in quotes, which is, and I'll read it. Is it? Quote, everyone involved knew what was going to happen. I asked him something about like how many different people were involved in this, and he said, well, it was all through one-on-one with one other person. But his conclusion was that the result of the end of that was that everyone knew what was going to happen before the meeting. So that's what I would base that on.
Okay, I can tell you in the history that I've been here, that has never happened. This particular election, that never happened. One person asked me if I'd be interested. And my statement's always been, whatever the board would like me to do, if I get nominated, they vote me in, I'll take it. If I don't get nominated, that's fine. Some people would ask in the past if somebody'd be interested. There's not one person that goes around and it talks to everybody. There's no point person. It's just common courtesy that if you feel somebody would like to do something, you'd ask them, and if you get nominated, and then sometimes nominations are done right here at the table. There's no one person appointed or designated by this, and nobody knew, as a group, what was gonna happen. One person asked me if I would be interested. If it happened, it happened. If it didn't, it didn't. That was it.
Key word is designated. I mean, that makes it a conspiracy. I gotta push back hard on this. I don't feel like the integrity of this board should be collateral damage in, how shall we say it, a fight that wants to be continued by other means. I mean, the complaint goes on to say that all the rulings of the board, specifically, I'm guessing, 55 McGansett, should be negated by having a fraudulent election. I think that's the heart of the matter, to be honest with you.
Well, I would point out that in the very first correspondence I had with the town clerk and with Corinne, and I repeated that, and I hope it would be included in your packets that you got with this, that I said that many people would think that this was because of the 55 McGansett Road, and it's not. But I also stated when I said that I fully accepted that most people, even if I told them it was not, would believe that I was lying to them. So I put it right out in front to say, this is not coming from me because I'm trying to fight a battle about 55 McGansett Road. This is coming from me. If you want to know the truth about why it's coming from me, I've sat on town committees where exactly what John Carroll described to me without me prompting him. I'm not saying that's what happened. I'm just saying that's what John Carroll told me happened. His word was designated, so I repeated that to you. As the chairman asked me to only give you correct information, I'm trying my very best, and I believe that I'm only giving you correct information. Part of the correct information is that this, for me, and the reason I'm here tonight and taking this time, and the reason I took the time to put this complaint together, has nothing to do with 55 McGansett Road. If you don't believe that, it's too bad that I didn't tape the conversation I had with the lawyer who wrote the petition and organized that. I spent a lot of time talking to him on the phone, making sure that I could separate this from that, because I didn't want to disturb what they were doing, and this wasn't an initiative that came from anyone on that side. I have sat on a town committee of this town where the process which John Carroll described to me, where a single person was designated to be a hub, which that other members of the committee could talk to one at a time. Let me finish, Elmer, I understand.
I'm raising my hand.
Yeah,
May I
okay,
do
great.
that? I'm not
Yes,
cutting
yes.
you
Yeah, the
off.
floor is yours, Mr. York.
Okay, great. So, and again, and I was very disturbed by that process at that time. And I didn't make an open meeting law complaint. I wish I had. It would have been simpler. But I don't know that that's what this committee did. I did allege it in my complaint because it's the basis of my complaint. If what I allege did not happen, then I'm very happy. And again, I don't think that anybody on any committee, including this one, willfully did anything wrong. It's just that the information that was presented to me led me to believe that something wrong happened. Thank you.
I have no knowledge of anybody ever getting appointed. There's no point person, there's no designated person that goes out and makes a wholesale change and all that. So, from what you were saying, I can wholeheartedly disagree that that ever happened.
This word designated again. Designated by whom?
Again, I didn't put that word in my complaint. I just used it now because it was a word that John Carroll used to me in our conversation. It's too bad he's not here tonight, and I'm trying to relate this as correctly as possible, so I can just leave it at that. I'm not saying it happened. I'm saying it is hearsay. I heard it from him, and I'm repeating it. It was the basis of my complaint.
Look, we
Elmo, go ahead.
have three positions. The vice chair was going to have to chair this meeting on the 27th of May. And I don't see anything out of line if she touched base with the incumbents to see whether they were interested in running again. And if they said yes, fine. So when it came time for the nominations, when an incumbent is nominated and expresses a willingness to accept the nomination, what's the sense in having another nomination? I mean,
Unless somebody wanted it,
unless
Right.
somebody wanted it, then
No.
they had the opportunity
Yeah.
to speak up.
yeah, and everybody was afforded that opportunity.
And the position that Dan is holding right now is a position that was vacant because Stroney backed out of the overall election for the board. So if somebody called Dan and said, we need a chair, you've served before, would you be interested in serving again? And he said, I'll do, I forget your exact words. but-
Whatever the
Whatever the-
board decides.
Well, what's wrong with that?
Chris?
Let Chris go then.
I
I'll
just
answer.
want to say one thing, and I understand where John's coming from, but
Chris,
this complaint,
Can I close my
Yeah,
statement?
sure, sure.
John, I would just want you to know that I can only speak for myself, but I never had any notion that your filing this complaint was in any way tied to 55 Megansett. If anything, this board supported you and your colleagues in 55 Megansett. I mean, that's an irrational connection.
Okay, but I just
That's-
wanted to
sorry,
make it
Chris.
clear since somebody else.
Hold on, but I don't want it to be,
No, I got.
we need
I
an
got-
answer, we'll get an answer,
No,
if you
I'll
don't
stay
mind.
quiet. You guys
Yeah,
talk.
if you don't mind.
Ask
I'm
me,
sorry,
ask me
sorry,
when
Stuart.
you have questions for me.
Chris?
I was just gonna say, if we went by the rules of law and everything else, this whole complaint is based on hearsay. And because of that, it should be dismissed. Allegedly, the person who made this statement, a member of this board, is not here to offer his own comments. So, again, I think that this is, I totally agree with what David said. That you don't have facts. This is hearsay.
So, again, we have a complaint, we're going through the evidence, we'll go through step by step, and the remedies, we'll decide, and that's next page or two back here. So that is our decision with the evidence, and now our remedy is 2 pages in,
Page 9.
page 9. So we're gonna go
That's
over.
the requested action.
Right, so that's we're gonna go through 1 through 6. on that, so. Are we ready to go?
Well, I mean, you don't really have to go through 6. You guys already have like an overall remedy that you feel that it's not based, so you wouldn't have to do these remedies. So the alleged violation, you do not agree and state that that did not happen, so you don't have to remedy something you don't believe happened. So you can just make a general statement if somebody would like to say that a remedy is not required because we feel that the violation is hearsay and baseless. That could be your answer, remedy, action. You can say it better than that, but I'm getting tired now.
You're saying a lot.
I'm dialing down.
Saying a lot, saying a lot. So yes, should we state in the complaint, in the answer to the complaint, that no further actions needed because there was no violation?
Yes.
I agree.
Any other comments? And should we
Put that in motion.
Should we use that in a form of a motion similar to the first complaint? That will draft it up, sent out, reply only back to Corinne. Corrections will be made between Corinne and the chair. Will look at that and answer the complaint back to the state. If there's anything askew that might need to get an extension of time, we will do that. But if not, we'll send it out so it's done in a timely manner. Do I have a motion for that?
So moved.
I was gonna say, that's the word.
Well said. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and second. Any further discussion on the motion from the board? Mr. York, I'll listen to what, on the motion. Do you have anything on that motion?
Yes, yes, I'll try to keep it brief, and yes, there were 6 actions which looked very harsh. I apologize for that. I did send an email a couple days ago saying that it's really only item 6 that was most important to me. And just, so your motion didn't address those individually, and I think that's wise, given the situation as we now understand it. But relative to item 6, which I think it's part of your motion, is that Corinne's going to respond to this. To explain a little bit more why I filed this complaint and why item 6 is written as it is, I actually feel like everybody, including the boards doing the electing, would be better off if all of those conversations, including just the ones checking with the nominee, happened in public. I don't believe there's any reason that they need to happen in private. So people would come to the board meeting in public, and someone who's chairing that meeting could ask the person who's, someone wants to nominate you, do you want this acceptance? I actually feel that election of officers is one of the most important things any board does. And I feel that it would be better if even those communications, because they might not exceed the threshold of a quorum if it's just one person asking somebody else, but then the person nominating might be involved, so maybe that's 3. And then if there's 3 different officers and different people being nominated, maybe it is a quorum. But whether or not it's required by the open meeting law, I think it definitely fills the purpose of the open meeting law if those conversations were had in public. That's it.
On the motion, and I understand your point, but the open meeting law corrects every component of the complaint if it was held, if we had a deliberation, all those conspiracy theories. And the same thing, as you stated, in a board that you had, that you could have had a complaint, and could have rectified that and brought it to light, and you didn't. And if somebody else in this board had that same complaint and brought evidence to that fact, which there, I don't think there's anybody in this board that knows of any, those can get rectified. But hearsay and allegations that are unfounded, and nobody here that I know of participated in any of that. So number 6 is satisfied just by that alone.
I won't offer an opinion either way on that. I will just say that I think, given the circumstances, that the evidence that was presented to me was incorrect, that the complaint doesn't have merit on that basis, so I would agree with you on that. I wouldn't change the last statement that I just made about what would be best for all parties involved about having those questions. I'm just saying, I wouldn't change, I'm not gonna change or retract what I said about that.
Absolutely.
I would agree that this complaint does not have merit because it's based on hearsay.
And every board has the ability to either put it on their agenda items to do that if they'd like. You know, the nomination, as you stated, the nomination of officers at a public meeting. But it's historically done at as our guidelines say, the first meeting after the town meeting.
Oh, no, I agree with all of that. I mean,
Yeah.
I have no complaints about the process. It's just, well, I'll leave it. We're done, I think.
Yeah.
We're done here. I think it's,
But-
people
but
can go home,
yeah.
but I'll just leave it with what I said.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr.
Thank you,
York.
thank you all so much for the time you put into this.
So, on that motion, no
I
further
don't vote
discussion on the
I'm
motion?
sitting down.
Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, say aye. All opposed,
Abstain.
and an abstention.
And I'll abstain also.
2 abstentions. Motion carries. Thank you, guys. Next on the agenda are the minutes of 4/22/21. Anybody have any additions, corrections, deletions, or a motion to approve on the
Mr.
minutes of
Chairman, I make a
4/22?
motion that we accept the minutes of April 22nd, 2021 as written.
Motion made. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and second. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing and hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? 1 abstention. Next on the agenda is the minutes of June 7th, 2021. Anybody have any additions, deletions, corrections?
Mr. Chairman, I'd make a motion that we accept the minutes of the meeting of June 7th, 2021 as written.
Motion made to accept. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and second. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing and hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. Nothing left on the agenda. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. We're adjourned.